Good morning. How the devil... Oh, excuse me. My phone in my pocket, digging in my leg. Good morning, everyone. How the devil are you doing this Sunday? Hope you're all fit and well. What a day. What a day. What a time to be alive. What a day. So... Microsoft Teams meeting with New Zealand at 8 o'clock this morning. The show to do today, and then we're doing another one this evening, which I've got to be honest, I'm not entirely sure I've even told you about. Yeah, 7 o'clock tonight, we're going live. We filmed an interview with one of the youngest explosive engineers, or explosive demolition engineers in the entire world, just before Christmas. And we've saved it, and we've saved it, and we've saved it. It goes out tonight, 7 p.m. If you fancy tuning into a bit of that, there is a bit of whiz-bangery about it. Excuse me. There is some explosions and stuff like that, but by and large, it's an interview. But if you want to know the ins and outs about explosive demolition and the process and everything else, please do tune in. We'll be doing that at 7 o'clock tonight. Going to say a few good mornings. Who have we got? We've got Chris. Well, let's go right back to the very beginning. Peter McKenna was here at 9:22, beating Dan Cullen. Dan Cullen is usually first here, but he followed along soon after at 9:55. Good morning to both Peter and to Dan. And then when we actually hit the go button, Chris Ford very kindly pitched up. Morning, Chris. Morning, and good morning. Happy hump day indeed. Jim Turner is here. Ken Hatcher is here, bringing the weather report. I've got a real tickle today. Gary Major's here as well. Speaking to Gary over on LinkedIn earlier this morning. Watch this space. And who's looking forward to Friday? I'll be going out storm chasing if I'm feeling well enough. Wait, bear with me 1 second. Sorry, I had a heater going on under my desk. It's cold in here this morning, and it's frying my legs. Speaking of storm chasing, stick around to the end, if you would be so kind, Peter, because oddly enough, storms, both weather and financial, are the subject matter of our morning monologue today. It's almost like we planned it. Yeah, almost. But yeah, stick around. Thank you for keying that up, Peter. Much appreciated. So without further ado, let me roll the intro, post the question of the day, and get this show on the road. It is Wednesday, the 22nd of January. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition. In today's show, Caterpillar, After Hours, the latest big bang from CDI, Cardem over in France, and Le Grand Demolition. And we're going old school once again for Vintage Plant Porn Part 2. Plus, in my morning monologue, which I've already mentioned, there's a storm coming. But will we be ready? That'll all make sense when we get to there. Our friend Wolfie has just joined us. I'm going back to bed for a bit. Good morning, y'all. I'm finally off overtime, but that means I missed most of the show, unfortunately. It's not the same without you, my friend, but thank you very much indeed for checking in. Dan Cullen says, vintage plant. Yeah, there's plenty of that coming. When is the Breakfast Show never interesting? You're too kind. Shucks, as they say. Yes, before we get to any of all of that nonsense, we do have a mystery machine to decipher. So stand by your beds. Is anyone going to catch Dan Cullen this month? We shall see. Right. Okay. So very quickly, well, I'll come back to the question of the day. But yeah, today's mystery machine. I've done it again. I've shuffled the colours a bit. Not that it helps in this one, but you get the idea when we get there. I'm looking for a make and a model. Mark Whiting. Mark Whiting has just arrived. Good morning to you, Mark. There is your button being pressed, as the actress said to the bishop. Probably not. But good morning, Mark. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. That is the Mystery Machine. But while you're trying to figure that out, let me remind you very quickly of our question of the day. We've already had a couple of answers, but I'm going to remind you of it right now. Yeah. Now, I think we may have been down this path before, but I wanted to do it a little bit differently this time. If you could choose only one song to listen to for the rest of your life, what song would you choose? What song would you choose? Get rid of that flashing cursor. What flashing cursor? There's no cursors here. What the hell are you talking about? Not me, I don't think. So yes, what song could you listen to for the rest of your life? I was torn. I have made a decision. I am torn. New Europeans by Ultravox. There Was a Time by Guns N' Roses. And If I Can Dream by Elvis. I'm going with Elvis. It's a song I've listened to my entire life, and I never tire of it. So that's what I'm going with. 21 fresh French fries over on Instagram says, no one's watching, bro. You're wrong, mate. Because you do realise we're broadcasting over on YouTube and on Facebook and on LinkedIn as well. Sorry, but you're wrong. Middle of the screen. Apparently there's a flashing cursor in the middle of the screen on YouTube. Not me. My cursor is nowhere near that. So, going back to the question of the day, Ken Hatcher, not surprisingly, is going with Celine Dion. Let me just very quickly, you know the name Celine Dion, Celine Dion. Have you tried saying just, in the right order, have you tried saying just the vowels in her name? E-I-E-I-O. Yeah. Saw that online the other day. Been meaning to mention it ever since. Peter McKenna says, You Think You're Alone Now by Tiffany, 80s child. And A Fool If You Think It's Over by Chris Rea. That wasn't the original of the Chris Rea one, though, was it? I'm sure somebody else did that. Does that help with the flashing? Hang on a minute. Let me get myself in the middle. Does that help with the flashing? I don't know. It's not a cursor. There is a light behind my head. I think I got it on the wrong setting. I may turn it off and turn it back on again in a minute. So yes, we've got that. Jim Turner says the Intermezzo from Cavalier Rusticana by Mascagni. I'm not entirely sure, but yes, all gone very, very highbrow. And then bringing us back to normal, Dan Cullen says, Where the Streets Have No Name by U2 from the fabulous Joshua Tree album. Yeah, absolutely. And Gary Major is saying, Fool If You Think It's Over was Elkie Brooks. Yeah. There's an Elkie Brooks song that I read, Lilac Wine. Anybody ever heard Lilac Wine by Elkie Brooks? That's a stormer and no mistake. But keep those coming in while you're thinking about your favourite song or one you could listen to for all eternity. Let me show you the Mystery Machine. Let me give you a bit more. I will remind you that is not the real colour. The machine in question is a different colour, so do not be fooled. I am just trying to pull the wool over your eyes, which is not uncommon around these parts, as some of you are probably aware by now. Yes, that's what it is. It's not green. So try to imagine it in a different colour and see if you can come up with both a make and a model. While you're doing that, it is time to crack on and get this thing started. So here we go. Yeah, the film I'm about to play you right now, it's over on YouTube. I've borrowed it for my own purposes, and it was labelled Caterpillar After Hours. Intrigued, I had a look. It is Caterpillar After Hours. I think you'll enjoy this. Hatcher, right on the money, says, wow, good video. Almost like a Disney video. It is like Disney After Dark, isn't it? You know, the cast in the background. Yeah, fantastic video from Caterpillar. Not entirely sure what they were trying to prove with it, but I thoroughly enjoyed it nonetheless. Mystery Machine, which currently looks like that. We've got Peter McKenna reckons it could be an Elise 900 skid steer loader. It's not an Elise, and it's not a skid steer. Let me show you a bit more, see if that helps you along the way. It does have a wheel. It's probably got more than one, in truth be told, but that's what you've got. Don't be fooled by the colour. The colour is there to throw you off the scent. Nothing more than that. Keep the guesses coming in. Let me take that away because we've got some more stuff coming up. In actual fact, we've got a big bang from those fine folks at CDI in a minute. Just a second after this.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, CDI, one of those companies that requires no introduction whatsoever. They've blown something else up. Done a really good job of it. Shock horror. Have a look. Now, I think we're suffering from a bit of predictive text issues here with the Mystery Machine. We've got Dan Cullen is going for the vacant 220 mini loader. I've got a funny feeling he means Avant. I think his phone's just playing tricks with him. Same with Ken Hatcher, who reckons it's a Laligo loader from yesterday. Are you talking about a Long King? A Long King, possibly? And then we've got Cast 28-ton mini or 2018 mini loader. I'm guessing that's Cat, not what that either. Peter McKenna being fooled by the colour. Avant 423. It is not. Dan Cullen going for the Multi One 2.3. It is not. And it is not an Avant 755i. It's not an Avant at all. In actual fact, I can tell you, and it makes me wonder if he actually had a hand in its creation. Mr. Major over on LinkedIn reckons it could be one of those. A Neomac Nova compact wheel loader. I'm looking for a model, but let's just say you are so close. I almost gave it to you. There's a little bit more to be going on with. So we know roughly what it is. I'm looking for a make. Well, we've got a make. We just need a model. That's what we're after. Keep the guesses coming in. Can anybody do fastest finger first and actually beat Gary Major to the punch? Back after this. Yeah, so caught up in the mystery machine that I completely forgot. Obviously, we've just seen some explosive demolition. 7 o'clock tonight, we're doing more about explosive demolition. So if you're into explosive demolition in any way, shape or form, you might like to tune into that. All the usual channels, broadcast everywhere that you normally see this show. So if you're on Facebook, come to Facebook. If you're on Instagram, go to Instagram. If you're on LinkedIn, go to LinkedIn. You'll be able to see it there. Going back to the mystery machine, who do we have here? So that's what it looks like there. LinkedIn user, which is Gary Major, designed by my pal Massimo at Main Engineering in Italy, he says. He also says, is it the X340? It's not. It is, in fact, and I can tell you, Gary Major actually beat Dan Cullen to this by a minute. The correct answer is that it is the Neomac or Neomash X30. There's Dan's version of it as well. And I can just prove it to you. Let me take that away. But Gary Major gets the points today. Let me show you the whole thing. There you are. That's how it should look. That's how I made it look, but that's how it should look. It is the X30. So Gary Major gets some points on the board. So the Dan Cullen winning streak is over. Probably not for long, truth be told, but it is over. So, yeah, well done, Gary. Commiserations to everybody else that took part. And again, I will remind you, 7 o'clock tonight, be there or be square. I'll be back doing stuff. You get the idea. So, yes, demolition. Let's go back. Cardem over in France. You know, my personal favourite French demolition contractor. And they're doing stuff again. Confusion reigns. Confusion reigns with the Mystery Machine. Probably because I'm an idiot. So we'll come back to that in a second. Chris Ford. Question of the day. What is your favourite song, or what song could you listen to for all eternity? He is going with Stairway to Heaven. Good luck with that. I don't know what it is. Listen, I'm an admirer of the musicians involved and everything else. I don't do Led Zeppelin and I don't do Pink Floyd. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether it was, I don't know, just I was the wrong age when it came along or whatever it might be, but literally can't abide Led Zeppelin or Pink Floyd. I realise that probably puts me in the minority, but can't abide either of them. Dan Cullen clarifying, cast is a forestry loader. I said he meant cat, he meant cast. He was wrong, but it didn't matter in the end. Gary Major has left because he's got a meeting to attend, not a problem at all. And then, this is where the confusion starts. Peter McKenna is correct me. It's a Star X30, not just an X30, he says. They also have a Nova X30. Yes, I'm being a pedant, but you say you need the correct model every show. I've got to be honest, I do say that, and I do mean that. You're absolutely right. My apologies. All I would say is I'm glad it wasn't the end of the month and we were down to a tie, and this would have been the breaker, because Gary Major has just got his first points on the board. I don't think it's likely to affect the leader or the league table in any way, shape, or form. But you're dead right, Peter. You're not being a pedant. You're being correct, and we like correctness around here. Not necessarily political correctness, but we like correct. Great time-lapse video, says Dan the man. Great song, Chris. Yeah, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is, but just not for me. Not for me. Our friend Mick has just arrived. Morning, Mick. How are you doing, my friend? Hope you're fit and well. And Dan Cullen is going for Highway to Hell. Highway to Hell, absolutely. The mighty AC/DC. See, if I was choosing something by AC/DC, Back in Black or Thunderstruck. Oh, any of those. Anyway, enough of all of that. We've still got some stuff to get through. We've got some vintage plant coming for you next. I think Mick's just arrived to see the vintage plant, actually. Back after this.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Yeah, if you were here yesterday, you'll know we did a bit of a vintage plant rundown with a bit of blues, a bit of Muddy Waters in the background. Proved quite popular. And I go where the audience is. So, after the show yesterday, leapt onto YouTube to see what else I could find, and I came up with this. some lovely old kit there. I'm going to go over to this. Peter says, I listened to the Demolition news music again yesterday after it popped up on my YouTube. You're talking about the old one, are you? The old music? I guess you probably are. Just as a very quick aside, obviously we changed the music. I think we changed the music when we got to our 500th episode because we had a bit of a rebrand and a bit of a relaunch. We're planning to do the same at our 1000th episode. So 135 episodes from today. So roughly, I don't know, July time, thereabouts. There will be new tunes, new graphics, new pretty much everything, I would have thought. So looking forward to that. Don't know what it's going to look like, but we're doing that. Dan Cullen was enjoying the dozers and he says, oh, tune, perfect for this video. I don't know what it is. Old Plant just seems to need blues. Same as time-lapse. Any time-lapse video seems to need a bit of sort of techno, dubstep, something like that. I maybe it's just me. A bluegrass mountain mama. I don't think he means me, but thank you very much indeed for that, Peter. Yes, now, speaking of Peter, he mentioned the fact that we were in for some bad weather at the end of the week. On Friday this week, it's all hell is going to break loose, apparently. Just odd. Pure coincidence. I didn't tell him I was doing this. The morning monologue today is on the theme of weather. Storms, you'll see. Just on the final bit here, on the choice of music you listen to for the rest of all eternity. Where are we? I'm sure there was another one from Dan. Where is it? Yeah, he went for Yellow Submarine by the Beatles. Not a fan of that. He also went for Let It Be by the Beatles and Help by the Beatles. And Peter McKenna, I'm with you, bloody Beatles. Yeah, if I had to listen to a single tune and it had to be from a single band, the Beatles wouldn't be in the running. They really wouldn't. I'd be a Stones man all day long. Give me Shelter or something like that. Just my own personal taste. And I'm sure there are some Beatles fans watching, and I have every sympathy for you. If you get my drift. Back with the storm warning in just a moment. Don't forget, 7 o'clock tonight, we're going to be doing something else. But here's the build-up for the monologue. If the weather forecasters are to be believed, and frankly that's a big if, the UK will be battered by high winds on Friday this week. Those winds will gust at up to 60 miles an hour inland and as high as 80 miles per hour in more exposed coastal areas. That means that as of the broadcast of this video, those in the heavy lifting business have about 2 days to stand down their mobile cranes and to weather vane their tower cranes, releasing the slew brake so the crane can rotate 360 degrees in the same direction the wind is blowing. Meanwhile, our cousins in the scaffolding sector have about 60 hours in which to make safe any scaffolding that might be vulnerable. Plenty of warning, you'd think. And yet I'm still expecting to report on a scaffold collapse somewhere in the UK before the week is out. Not because the coming storm will be worse than anything we've experienced before. Not because the coming storm will be worse than anything we've experienced before, but because the UK construction industry is notoriously poor at heeding warnings. And this extends way beyond remembering what happened the last time it got a bit breezy. It's symptomatic across the entire sector. The moment the industry emerges blinking into a post-recession sunshine, everybody trots out the phrase, fix the roof while the sun is shining. Do they? We know that each upturn is followed by a downturn, that every high is followed by a low, every peak begats a trough. And yet every downturn, every low, every trough takes the entire sector by surprise, every single time. Companies that were shouting about their new equipment fleet on social media just a few months ago are now in serious financial straits because they can no longer afford the finance. Companies that were welcoming new staff members in LinkedIn posts are quietly laying off staff and hoping that social media doesn't hear about it. And when the recession does hit, as it always does, those company bosses that splashed the cash on a Bentley when times were good are left to lick their wounds, even as they're telling staff that the financial cupboard is bare. But this isn't hard. This isn't quantum mechanics. If times are good, enjoy it by all means. But know that it will not and cannot last. It never does. All the signs suggest that we're about to enter a period of recession and austerity, although quite how we'll tell the difference, I'm not entirely sure. And that's bad, obviously. We've already seen way too many companies collapse and too many men and women left unemployed. But if there is a positive to be taken from yet more economic hardship, it's this. A downturn will give us all time to take stock, to reflect and to plan. We can batten down the hatches and prepare for when the good times finally roll back around, strip back the unnecessary and focus on the essential. It's an opportunity to mend and to heal, to refocus and to reset. But will we? Personally, I'm not hopeful. The industry was afforded precisely the same opportunity in 2020 when the world stopped for COVID. And that opportunity was squandered. The moment the lockdown ended, we reverted to our usual peak and trough mentality. My guess is we'll do the same again. So whether it's the high winds this week or the economic storm front following on behind, we're about to get a buffering. Will we heed the amber warnings? I doubt it. Will we make it through the coming storm? Who knows? But nobody can say they weren't warned. There you are. See, this is why they pay me the big bucks. Taking a storm warning and weaving in economic things. It's almost like I'm a journalist. Incidentally, and I'm not going to name names, but I had a message yesterday from a representative of one of the biggest construction equipment manufacturers in the world who had read a couple of my columns over on LinkedIn recently. The morning monologues that I do here, I then turn into articles over on LinkedIn. And he said, I don't actually have the phrase, but he said it was refreshing to see actual journalism still taking place in the plant sector. What does that tell you? What does that tell you, hey? Mick saying, going back to the question of the day, he is going for My Generation by The Who. Won't Be Fooled Again would be my personal favourite. But there we are. What have we got? One of the American Hurricane aircraft is in Ireland to track the storm and take meteorological, I think, readings from the storm. Rather than me, I would say. A double-decker bus was hit by scaffolding in Oxford on Monday. Yeah, now seriously, and this is not a jab at the scaffolding industry, although, you can always tell a scaffolder because, the drag marks on his knuckles, whole other story. But we've got, I was aware of the amber warnings probably 24, 36 hours ago. So we've had the best part of a working week in which to prep our sites and make sure that we're ready for the coming storm. And yet, turn on the TV on Friday night or Saturday morning, and chances are you'll see a big pile of scaffolding in the street somewhere. Hopefully, nobody hurt. And my win is already reaching that sort of speed. It must have been the onion rings with a steak last night. Hopefully, there won't be a follow through. Well, I'm hoping so as well. But you are a long way away, so it wouldn't really affect me. I don't think I'll get the fallout from that. 100 miles an hour predicted offshore and isolated areas. Yeah, sod that. That's proper blow, isn't it? Mick says, the Daily Mirror reported this morning the coming storm last week. The Met Office said no way there's a storm on its way. Speaking as a pensioner, someone make up their effing mind. Listen, I'm old enough and ugly enough to have remembered the storm of, it was 86, wasn't it? There will be no hurricane, said Michael Fish. A couple of hours later, the south of England was flat, had been levelled by winds mighty from on high. So yes, beware is what I would say. I'm looking forward to getting a new trampoline from the village on Friday, says Chris Ford. They do, don't they? Yeah, garden furniture and specifically trampolines decide to go on their travels. It's a bit blowy out. I'm going to hop next door, said the trampoline. Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. Love a good storm and a good freeze and snow. Yeah, absolutely. One of the great joys with the house I live in, has got kind of a bowed front window in both the front room and the bedroom, with sort of directly above. And we've had no snow. We had about 4 flakes a couple of weeks ago, and we've had nothing since. But to actually be able to sit in bed or sit in the front room and look at the snow, one of my personal favourites. And I have to say, if ever you find yourself, we did this once we were in Calpe in Spain. And one evening we sat there having dinner along the promenade. I don't suppose they call it the promenade in Spain, but we were sat there having dinner one evening, and there was an electrical storm taking place out at sea, miles offshore. But man alive, better than any firework display you've ever seen in your life. Absolutely fantastic. Dan says, you're a damn good journalist, in my opinion. Dan, as always, you and I are of one mind. I believe I'm a damn good journalist as well, and hardly conceited at all. You know, the funny thing was, you know, I'm a Brit. I struggle with taking compliments. I kind of need to deflect them. And when I had that one come in yesterday, good to see some actual journalism. For about a nanosecond, it was like, finally somebody spotted it. And then I was thinking, yeah, but you know, there ain't a bundle of competition out there, is there? You know, with the notable exception, I would say, of Graham Black over at Earth Movers magazine. there ain't a lot more out there. I'm one of the best in the world, doing a job that only 2 or 3 people do. Chris Ford says, I like snow. It makes the yard look tidy. No central heating. It can be a challenge. Do you know that? I'm sure there is probably a technical term for this, but you know the way that snow changes the sound? Has anybody else noticed that? Or I'm sure it's not just me, where you have you know, a decent blanket of snow, a couple of inches of snow, and it makes the world quieter. We've got a railway line. I mean, I can't hear the trains most of the time, but there is a railway line. So middle of the night, if a train goes by, you kind of hear it in the distance. But if you've got a blanket of snow, it's all gone. It's literally like somebody has soundproofed your world. Absolutely love that. Really do. Peter says, do people still have trampolines in their gardens? Thought that was a yesterday thing. We certainly used to. And well, there we are. It's all hot tubs and man bars nowadays. I think you're probably right. Just going back to this, my kids had a trampoline. Always stayed in the same place. Didn't pop next door at all. Kids absolutely loved it, but it was a big one because I've got 4 kids. It was a big one, and I went on it once, and it was one of those. I think, Mick, I'm looking at you. I'm sure you've had this. There are times in your life when you suddenly are reminded of your age, and I know it's when you I don't know, policemen start to look young, or you start to see football players that you remember now, football managers. One of the ones for me was being on a trampoline. As I say, it was a big trampoline, and I went on a couple of bounces, and I did a couple more bounces, and I found myself on a level with our upstairs bathroom. And in my head, my brain went, yeah, you really shouldn't be doing this. You're about to break a hip or something. And so I got off. It was a sure sign of my passing age. Dan says, yes, it does. Everything goes silent. It's beautiful. It really is. I realise it's not going to be silent, but I've always fancied, I've been up to the Arctic Circle, which was lovely, but I'd love to go to like Antarctica, that blue ice. As I say, I know it's not going to be quiet because the winds are blowing, but I'd love to go and have a play in that. That would be awesome. So yes, going back to my morning monologue, which is where I was before all of this, before I went off sideways. Good morning to Ed the Builder, by the way. The only thing I know about snow and cold, my old John Thomas shrinks back to my heart. Yeah, it does. It does do. I'm not saying yours. I'm just saying in general, they do that. As I say, good morning to Ed the Builder over on Instagram. I've been doing this job, not this job, but being a journalist in construction for 36 years, thereabouts. So I've seen, I went freelance in 1990, basically to coincide with the recession. Made me regret my decision for a few weeks until the money started rolling through, and then I was fine. But I've literally seen the industry do that. Every 4, 5, sometimes 10 years, we've gone off the peak and we've gone into a trough. And I've seen it so many times, and we know it's coming. Everyone knows it's coming, and we do that thing. You know, we've had a period, or we've entered a period where everyone's busy. There's lots of work. Everyone's fully employed. Everyone's making a decent wage, and everything's right with the world. And we all look at each other and we say, you know, we should really fix the roof while the sun's shining. But we don't. We never, ever do. What we do is we start to flash the cash. As I say, company bosses going out and buying top-of-the-range Range Rovers and Bentleys and Ferraris and Lamborghinis and stuff like that, or filling their yard with equipment that, frankly, they don't need, but it looks quite good on a social media post. And then you know full well that a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, the Bentley's going back and they're going back to the works van. The machines that are out in the yard are costing a fortune in finance, and they'll have to go somewhere else. And all that expansion that you did is going down the toilet, laying off staff, causing issues with the supply chain. And we do it every single time without fail. And I don't know, is it that we have a short memory? Is it that? Is it maybe this time will be different? You know, I've seen it all. I've seen it all before. It's not going to happen again. And then it does. Why are we so bad at heeding warnings? And even, excuse me, a bit of beer in my mouth. Even going beyond that, if you think about heeding warnings, there are companies, and we all know who they are, but let's focus on the tier one contractors for a moment. There are companies in this business that are notoriously bad at paying late, partially paying, or not paying at all. We know who they are. We've all dealt with them. Now, to my mind, you know, I work in a different way, but you know, I operate on a protocol of you only get burned once. If I work for a company and they delay payment, or they put obstacles in the way of me being paid, that's it. The drawbridge comes up. I will never, and I do mean I will never work for them again. There are several manufacturers, big manufacturers, that I will not work for at all because they've stitched me up in the past. I just flatly refuse. Now, taking that from a construction point of view or a plant hire point of view, we know who they are. You know, it's very, very, very common knowledge who the bad payers are, who will hang on to retention money, who will basically wait until you're on the court steps with them before they hand over a check. We know who they are. We know all the warning signs are there. The red flags are flying, and yet we queue up. Oh, maybe it'll be different this time. It won't. It won't. And I wonder how many times smaller companies within the supply chain have been taken to the cleaners more than once by the same individuals or companies. You know, if we were to look back through the collapse of ISG or Carillion and look at the people that were left high and dry for payment, if we looked at that, would we? I mean, let's take those two. If we looked at those that were burned by Carillion, would we find a lot of the same companies being burned by ISG? In other words, they've barely made it through the collapse of one major contractor, and yet they've fallen for it again. I wonder how many there are of those. I wonder. Mark's that bored he started consuming himself. Yeah, beer doesn't taste good. It's got a nice chewy texture, but it doesn't taste good. What will AI make of the end of this chat? Who the hell knows? Here's the thing. Yeah, just very quickly, and I'm going to go off on a slight tangent. I was speaking to a friend of mine in New Zealand this morning, and I was telling him about the AI that we use for the recap. And he said, "Oh, I've never come across that. Can you send me an example?" And I thought, well, rather than doing a raw example, so I went. The guy's in the publishing business, so I took one of his articles, bunged it through the same AI that I use for our recap podcast, and sent it to him raw. I didn't tweak it. I didn't add or take away. I just basically did it and sent it to him. And it is astonishing. It really is. It does have by and large, it has a real good knack of going through lots and lots of bullshit and finding the nuggets within it. Nuggets in bullshit. Wish I hadn't said that out loud. Peter says, fresh snow absorbs sound waves, making it seem quieter. This is because snow is made up of tiny ice grains surrounded by air, which trap sound waves and prevent them from bouncing back. I didn't know the scientific terms, but I just wondered if there was actually a term for that, whether there was, oh yes, that's the so-and-so effect. Don't know. Dan Cullen, not heard that in ages, Mick. The old John Thomas used to be that term used low. Yeah, it did. Should I make a confession? This has got nothing to do with it, anything whatsoever. But me and a bunch, it's slightly embarrassing, and please forgive me, I was about 13 at the time. Me and a bunch of my mates, we were the school football team at Sutton West School. 13, so that would have been 1978. We were really bored one afternoon, and we sat down and we started to write down. Well, we started to write down all the swear words that we do. And there was a lot, 13-year-old from South London. You kind of pick them up along the way. And in fact, the list got so long that we then decided to sectionalize it. Because we obviously a lot of swear words relate to male or female genitalia. I'm not going to get any more specific than that, but we decided, the main list is too long. We need to categorize. So I sat there with a sheet of A4 paper, categorizing all of the swear words that we knew. I made the mistake in a maths lesson of passing it to my mate Steve for him to check it. I don't know what I was expecting from him checking it, but the teacher spotted me passing this thing and confiscated it. And I was later told by my history teacher that my handiwork was actually pinned to the notice board of the staff room. And I was tempted to ask, did you add any? Did you come up with any that I'd missed? But I didn't. Yeah, I don't know how I got there, but that's the absolute truth. Going back to John Thomas, mine pops into its tiny inbuilt rucksack. They pay late or not at all, yet people still go back to them. My thoughts entirely. I wouldn't say I'm in a privileged position. I'm certainly not. I could always earn a little bit more money, and I'd always be grateful for a little bit more money. But what is the point? To my mind, what is the point of working for a company that you already know is unlikely to either pay you in full or pay you in a timely manner? What is the point? Frankly, I'd rather work for somebody for less and know I was going to get paid than work for somebody for more and possibly not get it all. If you see my drift. Mick says, had a memo left on the desk in the yard last night. Hope this gives some advice to all on here. They had fire inspectors visit the yard, been told that if a lithium battery fire occurs, do not use water fire extinguishers on it. It reacts with lithium and makes the fire worse. It's a good point, that. It is a good point. I heard, and I heard this from Stefano Pansieri, and so he's a demolition expert. I don't know how much of an expert he is in electric vehicles and stuff. But when we were in Italy one of the last visits to Italy, he was telling me about if there is a thermal runaway on an electric car, the solution there is basically to pick up the car and submerge it entirely in water. I mean, literally underwater for a week. If you take it out before a week, apparently it can reignite itself. We have a lot of electric vehicles on the road now. How many people are aware of what to do in the event of a thermal runaway? We're all carrying these around. All of these carry a little lithium battery. If one goes off, do we all know what is supposed to be done with it? And Dan Cullen says, foam is a suppressant for that, I think. It could well be. Just thinking out loud here, we have electric machines, not many, but we have some. We have electric machines on sites. We also have some hand tools that are powered by lithium batteries. And we have, as I say, lithium batteries in mobile phones, computers, and that kind of thing. You know, when you sit your like health and safety tests, and they talk, I mean, I remember this is the one bit that I got wrong, actually, when I did my demolition site visitors. The one bit that I got wrong was about which fire extinguisher is for which. Should have been paying closer attention. My fault entirely. I mean, the actual training course was bollocks, but I should have got that one right. That's entirely on me. But has that been updated? Has anyone sat a health and safety test recently? And have you seen any reference to what to do in the event of a lithium battery fire? I wonder if that has been updated. My guess is it probably not. And that, if I do this carefully, this kind of plays into what I was saying. This is all about the heeding warnings. You know, we've had lithium fires in cars and in mobile phones and tablet computers and stuff like that. We know it's out there. Have the health and safety executive and those that take the health and safety executive information and convert that into training courses, have they heeded those warnings, and have they actually put in place some sort of safeguards or what to do in the event of? Have they done that? I've not seen any of it. I really haven't. It may exist, and I mean, I've got to be honest, not every single piece of health and safety advice goes across my desk because I'd be drowning in it. But is that happening? Dan makes a good point. Had fires in recycling centres. Yeah, I mean, recycling centres are notoriously prone to fires, but even more so now, I think, with the presence of these lithium batteries. My guess, and it is but a guess, but my guess is that the waste industry has probably reacted by now and has probably issued guidance and safety regulations and rules and whatever on, you know, what to do. And obviously we're not supposed to be throwing mobile phones into the trash and them getting caught up and, you know, possibly destroyed by an excavator sparking a thermal runaway. I know we're not supposed to be doing that, but I'm sure they've probably by now got in place, this is what to do in the event of such an incident. Do we have that in construction? Do we have that in demolition? Do we have that in the road transport industry? I don't know. You know, if a Tesla decided to burst into flames in front of you on the M40, what are you supposed to do as a responsible driver? Do you just drag people out and just allow the thing to burn and take out half the M40's road surface? I don't know. I've not seen any advice or guidance on this whatsoever, and it's only going to get worse. I mean, we're at the very thin end of the wedge in terms of electric machines. We've only really started the adoption of them. What happens when they are more widespread? Mick says, spoke with the yard manager this morning. He told me nothing has come through from the HSE. Still get their updates and not seeing anything, but the fire brigade are on the case. At least that's good to know. Feel there will be a major storm incident in a facility or on a site on these electric vehicles, and it's only going to take one. Listen, I've said it enough times. You all know I'm an electric machine fan. I am. I do believe that they are part of the way forward. I genuinely do believe that. But I do wonder, and I'll come back to my other point in just a second because it's about what I want to be writing about this afternoon. I do wonder if the bits of the construction equipment industry that have not bought into the electric dream, that have not currently put their first step on the road to hydrogen, they would have a field day with that. Yes, that's why we're sticking with diesel. Just look at these electrics. They catch fire all the time. You know, one incident would be enough for them to do that. It really would. Look at the car industry. You know, like him or loathe him, and frankly, I'm going with the latter. Elon Musk turned the car industry on its head. every time there's an incident involving its auto drive or its autonomous driving mode, or every time there's a Tesla catches fire, those that are still from the traditional car manufacturing side of things are having a field day. Yes, Elon Musk's all well and good giving you Nazi salutes at presidential rallies, but look at your cars, they're exploding all over the place. Truth be told, diesel cars burn, petrol cars burn, they always have. But they will leap upon that. And I think they will have exactly the same thing. Should there be a major blaze caused by an electric machine, I think the diesel people would leap on it. I think we'll have exactly the same with hydrogen when that rolls around as well. Peter McKenna says, yes, Mark, in road transport, batteries are under the carriage of hazardous goods, and there are procedures in place for accidents. At least that's good to know. An electric car fire sounds better than a heated rear window for keeping your hands warm this time of year. Yeah, I'm not too sure I want to get too close, though, because they do that flary up thing, don't they? I've seen a couple of films of, as I say, this thermal runaway, and it's like burny, flash. I wouldn't want to be warming my hands on that. I love getting up in the morning, walking out to a pre-warmed, defrosted car. I chuckle when I look at the neighbours shivering, scraping ice. Yeah. This just goes to show why I shouldn't be allowed out of the house, basically. About this time last year, we had some snow and then we had some ice. And my wife was going out early one morning and literally went out to the car, started it up, and the thing was frozen. So I went out and I'd recently, I wouldn't say I'd boiled the kettle, but there was still some quite warm water in there. And I know you're not supposed to do it, but I basically put it in a jug, went out, and I put it onto the windscreen. And I was stood on the driver's side of the car. And when I poured the water on, yes, it did away with the ice. It didn't crack the windscreen, and I realised that was a risk. Didn't do that. But what it did do was turn on the automatic windscreen wipers. So the water, the quite warm water that I'd just thrown on the windscreen was thrown back at me. That was fun. So don't do that. How safe is an electric vehicle in a collision? It has a higher chance of going up. Maybe. What I would say is batteries tend to be well tucked away, but it is a possibility. Chris says, when the army goes down the electric route, I'll follow. Can you imagine asking the enemy to cease fire while you charge your tank? Hang on, we'll be with you in a second. Do you remember the battery storage place went up in flames? The fire people basically let it burn itself out. Yeah, well, it's hard enough to pick up a car and submerge it in water. What do you do with a battery plant? You can't do that. It's basically going to run its course. Doesn't bode well, does it? Really doesn't. Anywho, people, that's an hour. Dan, they reckon battery electric vehicles are safer than ICE, internal combustion engine vehicles in a collision. That's a good one, Chris. Yeah, it is indeed. Right, people. I've got so much to do today. I don't even know when I'm going to have time to fart, if I'm being completely honest. So I'm going to draw a line in the sand and crack on. If you are around tonight, I'd love to have your company. As I say, it's slightly different to our usual fare in that it is about explosive demolition. There's a young man. There's a young man, Cormac McLean, 23 years old, probably the youngest explosive demolition engineer in the world, just bought a demolition company at 23 years old. And I'll give you just a very quick glimpse of tonight. This is how the show starts because I've already pre-recorded it. Here's what he did. 20 years ago, he was 3 years old. And because of his connections within the demolition industry, he was invited to press the button to initiate the explosive demolition of a bridge up near Manchester. And 20 years later, almost to the day, he was so inspired, he went along to buy the company that had invited him along. And he is now the MD of that company, youngest explosive demolition engineer in the world. That's what the story is tonight. So if you fancy a bit of that, please join us. Mick says, mind you, it would be hold on to your bollocks if it was hydrogen. Yeah, good point. Boyle, have a good day and fart away. You wouldn't want to be around. I have to hold it while I'm on the show because the microphone is quite sensitive, but all hell breaks loose in just a moment. Dan says, have a cuppa on me, Mark. I'll do my very best. Thank you very much indeed. I'm going to get some sideways looks walking around Aldi tonight, listening to your show. I tell you what, of all the shows that we do of an evening, this one is one to listen to, actually. It is. I mean, it's an interview, so we've got a couple of people on film and stuff. There is a bit of whiz-bangery at the start, but by and large, it is pretty much audio. So if you fancy just listening in, while you got your feet up or you're wandering around Aldi, you could do that. Tune in if you can. Hope to see you then. Until then, everybody, have a fantastic day. And don't forget, it is Wednesday today. Come Friday, if you were wearing a wig, nail it down because it's going to get windy out there. See you tomorrow.